It is Christmas night 2025, somewhere in Jabo village, Sokoto state, northwestern Nigeria. A farmer trying to sleep in his hut thinks he hears something strange, a low rumble in the sky above his home. Within minutes, the darkness explodes. A massive blast tears through the night, turning the horizon into daylight. Homes begin to shake. Residents pour into the streets. The glow hangs in the sky for hours. 500 kilometers away in Ofa, Kwara State, 3 explosions wake the town late on Christmas night. Debris crashes near the Central Hotel. Buildings crumble. And in Washington, D.C., as Nigerians scramble to understand what just happened, President Donald Trump posted to Truth Social, quote, "Tonight at my direction as Commander-in-Chief, the United States launched a powerful and deadly strike against ISIS terrorists in northwest Nigeria, who have been targeting and viciously killing primarily innocent Christians at levels not seen for many years and even centuries." He ends with Christmas greetings to all. This was the first time in modern history that American missiles struck Nigerian soil. The first direct US military action in Africa's most populous nation. But here's the thing, nobody could say with certainty who the missiles actually hit. Nobody could explain why debris fell on villages with no terrorist presence. And nobody could reconcile two completely different stories being told about the same night. Trump said he bombed ISIS to protect Christians from genocide. Nigeria said it was a joint counter-terrorism operation, nothing to do with religion. The villagers in Jabo said something else entirely. They claim no religious violence exists in their community. So, my question is, what actually happened here? To understand this rather strange night, we have to go back 2 months to a threat, a delegation, a phone call, and a decision that changed Nigeria's relationship with American power.
Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. Thousands and thousands of Christians are being killed. Radical Islamists are responsible for this mass slaughter. I am hereby making Nigeria a country of particular concern. That's a legal definition.
On the last day of October 2025, President Donald Trump announced that he was designating Nigeria as, quote, a country of particular concern, a label reserved under US law for nations engaged in severe violations of religious freedom. Countries on this list include North Korea, Iran, and China, and now Nigeria. The very next day, November 1st, Trump issued a threat, not through diplomatic channels now, not through official statements, but through his social media account. He said, if the Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians, the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria and may very well go into that now disgraced country guns a-blazing to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible atrocities. He added, quote, "I am hereby instructing our Department of War to prepare for possible action. If we attack, it will be fast, vicious, and sweet." Now, you need to understand that Trump was not just making these threats. Nigeria's security situation is a mess. Consider the month of November, for example. On November 17th, gunmen stormed a girls' secondary school in Maga, Kebbi State. They killed the vice principal and abducted 25 schoolgirls. 4 days later, November 21st, armed men invaded St. Mary's Catholic School in Papuri, Niger State. They kidnapped 303 students, some as young as 10 years old, along with 12 teachers. It was one of the largest mass abductions in Nigerian history. That same week, kidnappings happened in Zamfara and in Kwara State. Nigeria, you see, was in crisis. That much was true. But Trump's framing of that crisis as a Christian genocide, that was something else entirely. When researchers at the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project analyzed who was actually being killed in Nigeria's conflicts, they found something that didn't quite fit the genocide narrative. Since 2009, tens of thousands of civilians have been killed by Boko Haram and its affiliates. The majority of those victims were Muslims. Boko Haram has bombed mosques, killed imams, and terrorized Muslim communities for over a decade. The violence is indiscriminate. It is also concentrated in the northeast, where the population is predominantly Muslim. Now, I have to say this. This does not mean Christian communities are not being targeted or attacked with innocent civilians killed in their thousands. Two things can be true. The bone of contention here is whether religion is the motivation for these killings. And several research and independent investigation has found no data to support that claim. The BBC reached the same conclusion, saying there is no evidence that suggests that Christians are being killed more than Muslims in Nigeria when all forms of violence are considered. But that's not the story Trump was telling, and it wasn't the story American lawmakers wanted to hear.
When the Christians or any such group is slaughtered, like is happening in Nigeria, 3,100 versus 4,476 worldwide. What horrible numbers. Something has to be done. The killing of Christians is not going to happen.
Nigeria understood the threat was serious. So within weeks of Trump's guns are blazing post, a high-level delegation flew to Washington. This wasn't a diplomatic courtesy call. This was now damage control. The delegation included Nigeria's National Security Advisor, the Inspector General of Police, the Chief of Defense Staff, the Attorney General, and the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. They met with everyone who mattered. Pentagon officials, State Department leadership, members of Congress, and critically, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. The message from Nigeria was clear. This is not genocide. Violence affects all Nigerians. The religious framing does not reflect our reality. But Nigeria also made concessions. Both sides agreed to a new cooperation framework, intelligence sharing, faster processing of defense equipment requests. There might have been agreements about joint operations against terrorist groups. What Nigeria didn't know, however, or what it chose not to publicly acknowledge, was that the Pentagon had already begun drafting intervention plans. Light, medium, or maybe even heavy options. Contingency scenarios for US military action on Nigerian soil. And while Nigerian diplomats were negotiating in Washington, something else was happening in the skies over the country. Reuters revealed it 3 days before the Christmas strikes. US contractor spy planes had been flying regular surveillance missions over Nigeria since late November. They launched from Ghana, crossed into Nigerian airspace, and mapped the locations of jihadist groups across the northwest. As December 25th came closer, those planes kept flying, gathering more intel. The Nigerians had said yes to cooperation, but what they got was something more than just cooperation. On Christmas night, Nigeria's Foreign Minister Yusuf Tuga picked up the phone. On the other end, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. They spoke for about 19 minutes. When the call ended, Tuga called President Tinubu. The conversation was brief. Tinubu reportedly gave the go-ahead. The target? 2 camps in the Bounty Forest, Tanganza local government area, Sokoto State. According to Nigerian intelligence, these were staging grounds for foreign ISIS elements infiltrating from the Sahel. But Tuga insisted the strikes could not be framed as religious protection. They had to be presented as, quote, counter-terrorism, targeting extremism that affects all Nigerians, not defending one particular faith against another. Well, Trump would say whatever he wanted. Tuga knew that. But Nigeria also needed its own narrative. By midnight on Christmas Day, everything was in place.
We stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population around the world. This is not going to happen.
Between 12 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. West African time, in the Gulf of Guinea, approximately 600 to 800 kilometers from the target zones, the USS Paul Ignatius, an Allied Buk-class guided missile destroyer, began firing BGM-109 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Block 4 or Block 5 variants range up to 2,400 kilometers, speed 880 kilometers per hour, approximately 450 kg warhead of high explosive. flight altitude about 100 to 300 feet above land, so low that radar detection is almost impossible. The missiles navigated using GPS, inertial guidance, terrain contour matching, and digital sync correlation. They can strike within meters of their target coordinates. Simultaneously, MQ-9 Reaper drones deployed 16 GPS-guided precision munitions. The Reapers had been positioned on what the Nigerian government described as, quote, maritime platforms in the Gulf of Guinea, likely ships or offshore bases capable of supporting drone operations. The combination of ship-launched Tomahawks and drone-deployed munitions represented a layered strike package. According to US African Command, multiple ISIS terrorists were killed that night. According to Nigeria, the strikes successfully neutralized ISIS elements attempting to infiltrate from the Sahel. But that's not the whole story. Because while missiles were hitting targets in Tangaza, debris was falling on places that weren't supposed to be involved in this crisis. In Jabu village, about 500 meters from the local health center, missile debris or ammunition struck farmland. Residents described a projectile hovering overhead before the blast sent a hail of fire and fury through their settlement. And Jabu residents were adamant their village had no history of terrorist activity, no ISIS, no Lakurawa, nothing. More than 500 kilometers away in Ofa, Kwara State, the situation was worse. Debris fell near the Central Hotel. Some reports claimed 5 civilians were wounded. Also, 4 or 5 buildings were damaged or destroyed, though the Nigerian government acknowledged that debris indeed fell in both locations, but it maintained there were no civilian casualties. And here's where the story gets really uncomfortable. Trump said he bombed ISIS. AFRICOM said they struck ISIS camps. But when you look closely at what US and Nigerian intelligence actually knew about the target, you find something unexpected: confusion. The Tangaza local government chairman confirmed that Lakurawa terrorist camps were indeed hit. Many fighters, according to them, were killed. But who exactly are the Lakurawa? The answer depends on when you ask and who you ask. Lakurawa first emerged around 2016 to 2018 in the forest of Tangaza. They were armed herders from Mali invited by local communities desperate for protection against bandits. They married local women, they recruited local youth, they established camps along the Nigeria-Niger border. Over time, they transformed from protectors to oppressors. They beat young men for shaving beards or listening to music. They imposed Islamic taxes. They demanded that all disputes be reported to them, not to Nigerian authorities. But here's the question that matters for this particular story. Are the Lakurawa affiliated with ISIS, as Trump claimed, or are there something else? Well, recent research from the Combating Terrorism Center argues that Lakurawa is indeed now linked to the Islamic State Sahel Province, ISSP, the ISIS affiliate operating in the Mali-Niger-Burkina Faso border region. Well, if this is true, then Trump's ISIS claim would be technically accurate. But other researchers disagree. A senior analyst at Good Governance Africa stated plainly that, quote, "I haven't seen any evidence suggesting there is a link to ISIS. They are more Al-Qaeda." Well, that would then mean the US struck an Al-Qaeda affiliate and not ISIS. And then a third perspective argues that Lakurawa may just be a catch-all label for local bandits with loose ideological pretensions. They are not transnational jihadists at all, just criminals. Lakurawa doesn't claim attacks. It has no spokesman. Its fighters deliberately maintain ambiguous affiliations, never really disclosing whether they belong to ISSP, JNIM, or neither. Even the Nigerian military only formally confirmed Lakurawa's existence in November 2024. The group had operated undetected or unacknowledged for 6 to 7 years. So, when Trump announced that America had struck ISIS terrorists when AFRICOM reported hitting ISIS camps, what had they actually hit? The most honest answer here is nobody knows for certain. The US and Nigeria struck targets where multiple threat streams converge: local bandits, Lakurawa militants, foreign fighters using the area as supply corridor. In the murky reality of Nigeria's northwest, clear distinctions break down. But the ambiguity matters here. If the purpose was protecting Christians from genocide, as Trump claimed, then targeting an area where residents say Christians and Muslims coexist peacefully makes little sense. But if the purpose was degrading ISIS, then uncertainty about whether ISIS was even present undermines the mission. And if the purpose was counterterrorism broadly, then the religious framing was not just unnecessary, it was misleading.
Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria.
The morning after the strikes, Nigeria erupted, not in celebration, but in argument. Some activists called the strikes imperialist, extremely dangerous and reckless. Some noted this as humiliation and a moment where Nigerians became spectators in their own security. Some others accused Washington of pushing a hidden agenda, trying to deepen Nigeria's religious divisions. Well, the Tinubu administration pushed back. Officials insisted the strikes were Nigerian-led, Nigerian-approved, a sovereign decision to invite a partner's capabilities. In fact, Foreign Minister Tuga emphasized that Nigeria provided the intelligence, that Tinubu authorized the operation, that this was cooperation, not colonialism. But on the ground, in Jabo, in Ofa, the conversations sounded different. Villagers described homes shaken, the night sky turning red, not knowing who was fighting whom. For them, sovereignty wasn't measured in legal briefs or diplomatic statements. It was measured in who actually protects their homes and who bothers to inform them when the bombs start falling. That information didn't come from Asurok. At least the breaking news came from Trump. But when you take a step back from all of this, you begin to see something clearly. The Nigerian strikes didn't happen in a vacuum. They fit a particular pattern that stretches back more than a decade. A pattern of American military operations on African soil that began as limited and precise and became something else entirely. In 2011, the US and NATO launched airstrikes against Libya to protect civilians from Muammar Gaddafi's forces. The mission was narrow: prevent a massacre. But what followed was regime change, state collapse, and a civil war that continues to this day. ISIS established a foothold in cities like Sirte. The weapons that flooded out of Libya armed jihadis across the Sahel. In Somalia, AFRICOM has conducted hundreds of airstrikes since the late 2000s, all framed as counter-terrorism, all claiming precision, all asserting minimal or zero civilian casualties. Amnesty International documented dozens of civilian deaths in just a subset of strikes they were able to investigate. AFRICOM acknowledged only one case of civilian casualties after extended pressure, a strike that killed a woman and her child. The family never received compensation. And after all those strikes, Al-Shabaab remains one of the most lethal insurgent groups in Africa. The Nigerian strikes are AFRICOM's first kinetic action in Nigeria, but the command already operates in a region where overreach and mission creep are recognized risks. The question isn't just, was this one strike justified? The question is this the first step into a Somalia-style open-ended air war over northwestern Nigeria? Is this a one-time something, or is this the beginning of something much larger? Now, let's return to where we began. Jabo village. The fires have died down. Residents walk through their fields collecting fragments of metal. The Nigerian government says no civilian casualties. Local reports say otherwise. And now, with the precedent set, with a template created, with the first American missiles falling on Nigerian soil, a new question hangs over everything. What comes next? The strike accomplished something, possibly killed some militants, though even that is uncertain. It demonstrated American willingness to use force on African soil. It created a system for future operations. Yes, Nigerian intelligence, American firepower, shared political cover. But it also revealed something. The US now doesn't actually know who it is fighting in Nigeria's northwest. The intelligence is murky. The affiliations shift. The group that was hit may be ISIS, maybe Al-Qaeda, maybe neither. And the Christian genocide framing, it collapses under scrutiny. Both Christians and Muslims die in Nigeria's violence. Both suffer, neither is spared. And Nigeria, by cooperating with the strikes, they avoided a worse humiliation. Yes, Trump had threatened unilateral action. By saying yes, Tinubu ensured that at least his government could claim partnership and not subordination. But what does that partnership cost? Nigeria has long been West Africa's anchor state, the country that sends troops when neighbors fall apart. Now, 3 Sahel nations have withdrawn from ECOWAS, accusing the bloc of being too close to Western interests. So, if Nigeria is increasingly seen as a delivery mechanism for American military power on African soil, its ability to lead the region may erode. And if this strike is followed by another and then another, as happened in Somalia and has happened in Libya, then the question of who controls Nigeria's security will be answered, and not by Nigerians. In Jabo, the villagers are still asking the question that matters most. Whether or not the strike was legal doesn't matter much to them. The precision is even less important. All they want to know is their village still safe to sleep in tonight? Or are there more bombs on the way?